So last night I went to go see Masters of the Universe because I needed to leave the house because I hadn't left the house all day and I didn't know what else to do. So I went and sat in a different room and watched a movie that I didn't really think I'd enjoy. I didn't have that much expectation for. The trailer was just explosions and guns and CGI and Skeletor. But I was pleasantly surprised by how much I actually enjoyed the movie. I didn't really know going in what it was. I didn't know what Masters of the Universe was, but some of it looked recognizable to me. I'd seen like Skeletor. I'd heard the name Skeletor before. I'd seen the character, and after watching it for a bit, it sort of I clocked it. It's from the the YouTube video with the Hey Ya Ya song with the blonde animated character. So then I looked into it after, and it turns out this is, for anyone who doesn't know, if you are like me, it's a remake of a movie that was made, which was a movie made from an original animated TV show called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and the blonde guy is called He-Man, and he's a superhero who has a magic sword of power that turns him into a warrior or barbarian who fights Skeletor to defend Eteria. And that's kind of what the gist of the movie is. And then there's another movie, live action, with Dolph Lundgren. How do I say it? Is that how you say it? Who makes a cameo appearance in the new one? But yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. I think the story was decent. I'll get more into that later, but it sets it up fine. You've got a character, a prince, who's not quite the strong person, and he has to overcome that and go and fight and win back a terrier against Skeletor, basically. But I thought, the comedy in it was quite good as well. It wasn't like afraid to make fun of itself, and it's an old cartoon from like the 80s, so a lot of stuff in it might be considered a bit cringe now. Like the power is held within the sword of power, and if you say by the power of Grayskull, which is where that comes from, which I didn't know either, you turn into a barbarian, and then the bad guy's called Skeletor, and he has a skull for a face and things like that. It's all a bit overdone, so it'd be a bit cringy now, but it kind of knows that, and like the name He-Man as well, and it makes fun of that, and almost in like a fourth wall breaking way, but it's not done in such an overdone, annoying way like Deadpool and Wolverine, which I found almost unbearable to watch. It's done in a sparse sort of when it's part and relevant to the story way, and it's not just trying to force humor on you. It just kind of was like, yeah, we know this is a bit silly, but we're still trying to make the movie, and it's ignore it. It's a bit funny and it's a bit jokey and things like that. So I thought that it went quite well. I also weirdly felt this kind of like nostalgia. It was like this like childlike nostalgia when watching it for something that I've never even watched. And I don't really know why. I don't know if it's because there's a few like comic book stores and things, and it almost felt like it was going back to the roots of these kind of superhero fantasy universes where you have like the hero with the sword, and but there's kind of everything in this because it wasn't like swords and knights and things. It was also guns and spaceships and Skeletor and stuff. Kind of all of it, just and magic was in it as well. It was all just like chucked together in one. But yeah, I don't know how it weirdly made me feel nostalgic for something that I have no nostalgia for because I've never seen. So I guess it's just more of those things. And it wasn't even alive when it came out either. Like I'm 20, nearly 20 years after. Anyway, so the plot of the movie is, well, the opening scene is a bit of an exposition dump, but it's not too bad. It doesn't, tell you too much about everything. It kind of just sets the scene. It tells you about the Eteria, I think it was called, the planet, which is where they all live, where the Masters of the Universe live. And they all live in harmony, and it establishes then Adam, I think his name. I'm going to say Adam. I think it was Adam. I should have double checked that before the video. Or the Prince of Eteria, who establishes him, and he's like, a weakling. He's young. He's not big and strong like the other characters, and he's enjoying himself. And like his dad, then who's the king, is a bit like, no, you need to be stronger. That usual story arc. And then the whole world gets attacked by Skeletor and his minions, which have various forms. They're basically just orcs. One of them had a metal chin, some of them are spiky or whatever, and then a Maleficent-looking evil witch. So Skeletor wins, the world gets destroyed, but the sorcerer lady who lives in the Grayskull sends the young Prince Adam away with the sword of power through a portal, who then lands on Earth. But he loses the sword, so he's stuck on Earth for like 15 years, which is then where like the start of the actual movie, the non exposition dumping intro begins, and the way they sort of play that off as if he's just explaining his backstory on a date who walks away. So anyway, you got Adam. He's on Earth. He works in HR, and he's just spent his life trying to find this sword. And no one believes him because it's a silly story, because he basically just explains what I just explained. Eventually, though, he does come across his sword. He, gets it back. He raises it in the air, and that sets off the events to return for him to get attacked on Earth by a big wolf beastie thing, and then get saved by his childhood friend, who's also now an adult. And then they go back to Eteria only to find that it's a wreck, and then reestablish the good guys and go take it back and defeat Skeletor, who wants the Sword of Power to have the power himself. And what's quite funny is they kind of they poke like fun of this, that like the character Adam's he's quite meant to be like, he works in like HR, and he's meant to be quite empathetic and stuff like that, and he's trying to see what Skeletor's point of view is, and like give him more background as a character. But then they're all like, no, he's just bad. He has a skull for a head. He's just bad. There's no reason for it. He's just a bad guy, which is kind of just what he would have been in the movies, not in the comics or the original anime. He's just a bad guy for no reason, and they don't need to add some kind of complicated backstory about how he was mistreated by Skeletor parents and how, that led him to become a bad guy craving power or whatever, just to fit in. No, he's just a bad guy because he has a skull for a head. And all the other ones are bad guys because they're goblins and orcs and things like that, which somehow just worked. The comedy in it was just done quite well. It wasn't forced, and I don't know, kind of just worked for me. So they go back to Eteria, and he goes to find some of the old characters like Idris Elba, who was like the leader of the King's Guard, who's now depressed and a bit drunk, and they go and find him, and he does quite well in that. And then they find all the other characters who, in Earth, in his memories as a child, he's given all these characters special names like Ram Man because he rams into people, and Fisto because he punches people, which are silly like comic booky names, and they're able to make fun of that. But then it doesn't feel like cringy, and it doesn't feel like they're really like making fun of the whole franchise. It feels like they're just acknowledging that they know some of these names, which I'm assuming these are the names of the characters in like the original show, and that's kind of the point. And the way they've played it off is if this child who was drawing comics on Earth of his memories of Eteria has like come up with these names, because that kind of is what it feels like. So he gathers the whole crew, and then they fight. He becomes the barbarian god, and they go on. I mean, I don't want to spoil the movie, but there's not really anything to spoil, because what you expect to happen in a movie like this basically just happens. And then they fight, and then they win, and they take back Eteria, and simple basic story, but it was good enough. And then it was just a good 2.5 hours. It's not going to go down as like one of the greatest movies that I've ever seen, and some kind of feat of like acting and writing. It was just a lot more entertaining than I expected. And if they make another one, because they teased a bit at the end of new characters, I'm sure anyone who would have seen previous movies, like the older series or something, would know who they are. I have no idea who it is, but they tease some like characters who might, they could make a sequel to it. And if they did, I'd genuinely be kind of excited for it and would go and watch it probably when it comes out, like the day it comes out. So I think that's quite a good start. It's weird because I don't really look forward to superhero movies anymore. I think, I'm in that sort of group where, peak to Endgame, it's all just, Spider-Man was alright, but it's kind of, I'm bored of Doctor Strange and the Hulk, basically, which seem to be in everything that I see. But this kind of just has reignited a bit of like, oh, actually, maybe there could be something good. And maybe it's because it's a franchise that I haven't seen before. It's not another Batman. It's not another Marvel. It's not another of the same thing that we've seen. It's new characters, and when that happens, with a lot of Marvel movies, they can kind of just continue the story. They don't have to establish the character of Spider-Man because it's already established. It doesn't have to be a character arc. It doesn't have to be, writing to make it. Let's learn who the characters are in the world and things like that. Whereas this is a new franchise, so they've had to do that, which ultimately just makes it a better movie, because you need to do that in good movies. But in Spider-Man 5, if they were going to try and establish the story arc of Spider-Man again, it wouldn't make any sense and would be boring. But in this, they can kind of establish the arc and the character, and then that adds to making the movie better. So in the sequel, when everything's established, we'll see, it might end up just being guns, spaceships, explosions, pew pew pew, fighting, sword thing, and it'd be a bit boring because it's lacking story. So we'll see. But as a first movie, definitely enjoyed that one. Would recommend going and watching it. And I think that's about it, unless I think of anything else to say, so I cut all of this out. Oh yeah, I also really like the music in it. I don't know if it's like the original music from like the original series, but I don't know. Quite a lot of the beats were quite good. I think the timing. They put the Hey Ya Ya song in it as well. When there's a little chase scene, so they obviously know about the meme. So it's that kind of humor. It kind of makes sense, but it wasn't forced. It's kind of you wouldn't if you didn't know about the YouTube video of like the animated thing and that song, you would have just been like, oh, that's just a song for the chase scene. But if you do know, it's kind of it's referenced in it in like a subtle way, and it kind of makes it funny. Whereas certain other movies would be explaining to you the joke. It'd be like, oh, they'd have the guy turn and look to the camera and go, oh, this is like that song from the YouTube video. There, there's the joke. Laugh. But in this, it wasn't telling me to laugh and explaining when I should laugh, which is why I think the humor in it was a lot better than other movies that try and do something like fourth wall breaking things. So yeah, now I think the video's over.